The sound of shattering glass jolted me from my daydream. I rushed to the kitchen, my heart pounding, only to find Lucas standing amidst a sea of broken shards, his face contorted with anger. "Damn it, Farah. Can't you buy decent glasses for once?" he snarled, his eyes blazing with contempt. I bit my lip, fighting back the urge to remind him that those were the expensive crystal glasses his mother had given us for our wedding. Instead, I grabbed the broom and dustpan, my hands trembling slightly as I began to sweep up the mess. "I'm sorry, honey. I'll order new ones tomorrow," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Lucas scoffed, stepping over the glass fragments as if they were beneath his notice. "Don't bother. I'll take care of it myself. God knows you can't be trusted with anything important." His words stung, but I swallowed the hurt. This wasn't the man I'd married 10 years ago. Something had changed, and I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. As I finished cleaning up, I heard the front door open and close. Sophia, our 8-year-old daughter, burst into the kitchen, her backpack bouncing against her small frame. "Mommy, Daddy, I got an A on my science project," she exclaimed, her face beaming with pride. I forced a smile, pushing aside my troubled thoughts. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." Lucas barely glanced up from his phone. "That's nice, Princess. Now go wash up for dinner." Sophia's smile faltered for a moment, but she nodded and scampered off to the bathroom. I watched her go, a familiar ache settling in my chest. When had Lucas become so dismissive of our daughter's achievements? As I started preparing dinner, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother, Olivia. "How are things, dear? Still coming over this weekend to help with the bakery inventory?" I smiled, grateful for the distraction. The family bakery had been our pride and joy for generations, and even though Lucas sneered at it, I couldn't imagine my life without it. "Of course, Mom. Wouldn't miss it for the world," I typed back. Just then, Lucas strode into the kitchen, his suit jacket slung over his shoulder. "I'm heading out. Don't wait up." I frowned, setting down the knife I'd been using to chop vegetables. "But it's Tuesday. We always have family dinner on Tuesdays." He rolled his eyes, already halfway out the door. "Some of us have real jobs, Farah. I can't waste time playing house." The door slammed shut behind him, leaving me standing alone in the suddenly too quiet kitchen. I leaned against the counter, trying to steady my breathing. This wasn't the first time Lucas had blown off our family commitments, but something about tonight felt different. As I resumed cooking, my mind wandered to the past few months. Lucas's late nights at the office? The hushed phone calls, the way he always seemed to smell of unfamiliar perfume. A nagging suspicion had been growing in the back of my mind, but I'd been too afraid to confront it. Later that night, after tucking Sophia into bed, I found myself drawn to Lucas's home office. I knew I shouldn't snoop, but the need for answers overwhelmed my better judgment. As I rifled through his desk drawers, my hand brushed against something smooth and glossy. With trembling fingers, I pulled out a stack of photographs. My breath caught in my throat as I flipped through them, each image a dagger to my heart. There was Lucas, arm in arm with a stunning blonde woman, laughing and kissing in various romantic settings. The last photo slipped from my numb fingers, floating to the floor like a fallen leaf. As I bent to pick it up, I noticed something scrawled on the back in unfamiliar handwriting. "To my darling Elle, can't wait for our next adventure. All my love, Cassandra." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as the truth I'd been avoiding for months finally crashed down around me. My husband, the father of my child, was having an affair. The morning after my devastating discovery, I stumbled through our usual routine in a daze. As I poured cereal for Sophia, Lucas sauntered into the kitchen, looking infuriatingly composed. "Daddy, can you come to my dance recital next week?" Sophia asked, her eyes bright with hope. Lucas barely glanced up from his phone. "Sorry, Princess, Daddy's got an important business trip." I couldn't hold my tongue any longer. "Really, Lucas? Another business trip with Cassandra?" His head snapped up, eyes narrowing. "What did you say?" "You heard me," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "I know about the affair." Lucas's face contorted with rage. "You've been snooping through my things? Mommy? Daddy? What's going on?" Sophia's small voice quivered. I forced a smile. "Nothing, sweetie. Finish your breakfast and get ready for school." As soon as Sophia left for the bus, Lucas unleashed his fury. "You think you're so clever, don't you? digging through my private stuff like some desperate housewife. I'm not the one cheating, Lucas, I shot back. He sneered. Maybe if you weren't so caught up in that pathetic little bakery of yours, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere for companionship. His words cut deep, but I refused to let him see how much they hurt. That pathetic little bakery has been in my family for generations. It's part of who I am. Well, maybe it's time you grew up and got a real job, he spat, instead of playing with flour and sugar all day like a child. I felt my anger rising. That bakery puts food on our table and clothes on Sophia's back. How dare you belittle it? Lucas laughed coldly. Please, my salary is what keeps this family afloat. Your little hobby barely covers the cost of ingredients. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, a smirk playing on his lips. I've got to go. Some of us have actual work to do. As he stormed out, I sank into a chair, my head in my hands. How had we come to this? Later that afternoon, I threw myself into work at the bakery, trying to lose myself in the familiar rhythms of kneading dough and decorating cakes. My mother, Olivia, noticed my distraction. Farah, honey, what's wrong? She asked, her forehead creased with concern. I hesitated, then spilled everything. The affair, Lucas's cruel words, my fears for the future. Olivia listened, her face growing stormy. That no-good son of a... she began, then caught herself. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. You don't deserve any of this. I wiped away a stray tear. I just don't know what to do, Mom. For Sophia's sake, I want to make it work, but... Nothing, Olivia interrupted firmly. You can't let him treat you this way. You're stronger than that. Just then, the bell above the door chimed. Sophia burst in, followed by Lucas, who wore an expression of exaggerated patience. Mommy, Daddy's taking me for ice cream, Sophia exclaimed. I raised an eyebrow at Lucas. Oh, I thought you had actual work to do. He shrugged, a smug smile on his face. I made time for my little girl, unlike some people who are always stuck in this dump. Olivia bristled beside me, but I placed a calming hand on her arm. Have fun, sweetie, I said to Sophia, ignoring Lucas's barb. As they left, I caught Lucas whispering to Sophia, See, Princess, this is why Daddy has to work so hard, so you don't end up stuck in a place like this. My heart clenched as I watched Sophia's brow furrow in confusion. Lucas was trying to turn our daughter against me and the family business. Oh, Farah, Olivia sighed, pulling me into a hug. You can't let this go on, for your sake and Sophia's. I nodded, a newfound determination rising within me. You're right, Mom. It's time I stood up for myself and our family legacy. As I said the words, I felt a shift inside me. The pain and shock were still there, but now they were fuel for a growing fire. Lucas might think he had the upper hand, but he was about to learn that he'd underestimated me and the strength of the Reynolds women. The next morning, I woke up determined to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As I walked into the kitchen, I found Lucas hunched over his laptop, muttering angrily to himself. Everything all right? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. He glared at me. Not that you'd care, but I'm having issues at work. Not that you'd understand, given your occupation. I bit back a retort, focusing instead on making Sophia's lunch. As I spread peanut butter on bread, I noticed Lucas watching me with an odd expression. What? I asked, suddenly self-conscious. He shook his head. Nothing, just wondering how you can be content with this. He gestured vaguely around the kitchen. Don't you want more from life? His words stung, but I refused to let it show. I have everything I need right here, Lucas. My family, our daughter, the bakery. That damn bakery again, he interrupted, slamming his laptop shut. When are you going to realize it's holding you back, holding us all back? Before I could respond, Sophia bounded into the kitchen, her backpack bouncing. Morning, Mommy. Morning, Daddy. Lucas's demeanor changed instantly, his face softening as he turned to our daughter. Morning, Princess. Ready for school? As Sophia chattered about her upcoming day, I couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between Lucas's treatment of her and his attitude towards me. It was as if he was two different people. After dropping Sophia off at school, I headed to the bakery, my mind whirling with conflicting emotions. As I walked in, the familiar scent of freshly baked bread enveloped me, instantly calming my nerves. Morning, Farah, called Mason, our delivery driver and longtime family friend. Got a big order coming in today for the Children's Hospital fundraiser. I smiled, grateful for the distraction. Thanks, Mason. I'll get started on it right away. As I lost myself in the rhythm of measuring, mixing, and kneading, I found my thoughts drifting back to Lucas. Despite his cruel words and actions, I couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was troubling him. Hours later, as I was putting the finishing touches on a batch of cupcakes, my phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. "Working late. Don't wait up." I sighed, unsurprised but still disappointed. As I showed Mason where to load the boxes for delivery, an idea struck me. "Hey, Mason," I called out. "You've known Lucas for a while, right? Have you noticed anything different about him lately?" Mason hesitated, his usually cheerful face clouding over. "Well, now that you mention it, I did see him at that new fancy bar downtown last week. He seemed pretty worked up about something." My heart sank. Was he alone? Mason's uncomfortable silence was answer enough. I thanked him and retreated to the back office, fighting back tears. As I sat at my desk, surrounded by invoices and order forms, a strange calm settled over me. For the first time, I saw Lucas's behavior for what it truly was. Not just cruelty or dissatisfaction, but a deep-seated insecurity. I thought back to our early days together, how proud he'd been of my family's bakery, how he'd boasted to his friends about marrying into a sweet family. When had that pride turned to resentment? A memory surfaced. Lucas's father, a stern businessman, sneering at our wedding cake. "Cute," he'd said, his voice dripping with disdain. "But when are you going to get a real job, son?" Suddenly, Lucas's recent behavior began to make a twisted kind of sense. His father's disapproval, the pressure to climb the corporate ladder, the constant comparisons to his more successful colleagues, it all added up to a man desperately trying to prove his worth. As this realization dawned on me, I felt a mix of emotions: anger at his treatment of me, pity for his insecurities, and a newfound determination to stand my ground. Just then, my phone buzzed again. It was Lucas. "We need to talk. Meet me at the house in an hour." My heart raced as I read the message. Something in his tone felt different, urgent. As I locked up the bakery and headed home, I steeled myself for whatever was coming. One thing was certain. I wasn't going to let Lucas's insecurities destroy everything I held dear. It was time to fight for my family, my business, and myself. I arrived home, my heart pounding with anticipation. The house was eerily quiet as I stepped inside. "Lucas?" I called out, my voice echoing through the empty rooms. "In here," came his gruff reply from his home office. I found him hunched over his desk, surrounded by stacks of papers. He barely looked up as I entered. "What's going on, Lucas?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He sighed heavily, finally meeting my gaze. "I've been passed over for the promotion at work, again." For a moment, I felt a twinge of sympathy. Then I remembered his recent behavior and steeled myself. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully, "but that doesn't explain why you've been treating me and the bakery with such contempt lately." Lucas's face darkened. "That's just it, Farah. Don't you see? While I'm busting my ass trying to climb the corporate ladder, you're content to play around in that quaint little bakery of yours. It's embarrassing." His words hit me like a slap in the face. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mason. "Farah, we need to talk. It's about Lucas. Can you meet me at the bakery ASAP?" I glanced at Lucas, who had returned to his papers, dismissing me entirely. "I have to go," I said. "We'll finish this conversation later." He waved me off without a word. 20 minutes later, I rushed into the bakery, finding Mason pacing nervously by the counter. "What's going on?" I asked, my stomach knotting with dread. Mason's face was grim as he handed me a folder. "I overheard something at the bar last night. Lucas was there, bragging to some guys about how he was going to take care of the bakery broccoli problem once and for all." My hands shook as I opened the folder. Inside were copies of emails, all from Lucas's work account, detailing a plan to sabotage our upcoming contract with Sweetheart's Children's Hospital, our biggest client to date. "He's been spreading rumors about food safety violations," Mason explained, his voice tight with anger. "He's trying to get the hospital to cancel their order and blacklist us." I sank into a nearby chair, my mind reeling. But why? Why would he do this? Mason's expression softened. "From what I gathered, if he succeeds in tanking your business, he'll get that promotion he's been after. Something about proving his business acumen by eliminating local competition." Tears stung my eyes as the full weight of Lucas's betrayal hit me. Not only was he cheating on me, but he was actively trying to destroy my family's legacy, all for a promotion. Just then, my mother burst through the door, her face flushed with worry. "Farah, honey, I just heard from Mrs. Tompkins at the hospital. They're considering canceling our contract due to some rumors about—" She stopped short when she saw my face. "Oh, sweetheart? You know, don't you?" I nodded, unable to speak through the lump in my throat. Olivia wrapped her arms around me, holding me close as I finally let the tears fall. After a few moments, I pulled away, wiping my eyes. "What are we going to do, Mom? If we lose this contract, the bakery might not survive." Olivia's eyes flashed with determination. "We're going to fight, that's what. No son-in-law of mine is going to destroy what this family has built over generations." Mason nodded in agreement. "I'm with you, Farah. We'll gather evidence that'll clear our name with the hospital and expose Lucas for the snake he is." As I looked between my mother and Mason, I felt a surge of gratitude for their unwavering support. But beneath that, a fierce anger began to burn. Lucas had underestimated me, thinking I'd roll over and let him destroy everything I loved. Well, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. "Okay," I said, standing up straight and squaring my shoulders. "Let's do this. It's time to show Lucas that he messed with the wrong family." As we began to formulate our plan, I realized that this wasn't just about saving the bakery anymore. It was about standing up for myself, my family, and everything we believed in. Lucas had started this war, but I was damn well going to finish it. The next morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. As I walked into the bakery, Olivia was already there, poring over documents spread across the counter. "Morning, honey," she said, looking up. "I've been thinking about our situation with Lucas. We need a plan." I nodded, pouring myself a cup of coffee. "I know, Mom, but where do we even start?" Just then, Mason burst through the door, his face flushed with excitement. "I think I've got something," he said, waving a stack of papers. "Remember those emails I showed you? Well, I did some digging, and it turns out Lucas has been using company resources to orchestrate this whole scheme." My heart raced as I scanned the documents Mason had brought. There, in black and white, was evidence of Lucas's betrayal, not just of me and our family, but of his own company. "This is it," I breathed. "This is how we stop him." Olivia's eyes gleamed with determination. "We need to act fast. If we can prove Lucas has been misusing company resources, we might be able to discredit him before he can do any more damage to the bakery." As we huddled together, formulating our plan, the bakery phone rang. I answered it, my stomach dropping as I recognized the voice on the other end. "Mrs. Reynolds? This is Dr. Simmons from Sweethearts Children's Hospital. We need to discuss some concerns that have been brought to our attention regarding your bakery." I swallowed hard, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Of course, Dr. Simmons, what seems to be the problem?" As she detailed the false allegations Lucas had spread, I felt a mix of anger and desperation rising within me. This contract was everything to us. Losing it could mean the end of the bakery. After assuring Dr. Simmons that we would address her concerns immediately, I hung up and turned to face my mother and Mason. "We're running out of time," I said, my voice shaking. "If we don't act now, we'll lose everything." Olivia squeezed my hand. "Then we act now. Mason, can you get those documents to Lucas's company?" Mason nodded. "I've got a contact in their HR department. I'll make sure they see this today." As Mason left on his mission, Olivia turned to me, her eyes serious. "Farah, honey, there's something else we need to discuss." "Sophia?" My heart clenched at the mention of my daughter's name. In all the chaos, I'd almost forgotten how this would affect her. "What about her?" I asked, dreading the answer. Olivia sighed. "If we go through with this, if we expose Lucas, it's going to change everything. Are you prepared for what that might mean for Sophia?" The weight of her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I sank into a nearby chair, my mind reeling. On one hand, exposing Lucas's deceit could save our family business and protect us from further harm. On the other, it would undoubtedly shatter Sophia's world. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. "Picking up Sophia from school. Taking her for ice cream to celebrate my big news. Don't wait up." My blood boiled as I read his message. Even now, he was using our daughter as a pawn in his game. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I stood up, my resolve hardening. "We're doing this," I said, my voice firm. "For Sophia, for the bakery, for everything our family has built. Lucas doesn't get to destroy all of that just because he's insecure about his own failures. Olivia nodded, a proud smile on her face. That's my girl, so what's our next move? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. We gather every piece of evidence we have, emails, financial records, witness statements, everything. Then, we present it all to Lucas's company and the hospital. We show them who he really is and what he's been doing. As I spoke, I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. This was it, the point of no return. Whatever happened next would change our lives forever. And Sophia? Olivia asked gently. I closed my eyes for a moment, my heart aching for my little girl. We'll protect her as best we can, but she deserves to grow up seeing what real strength and integrity look like. And that starts with us standing up to Lucas. With our course set, we threw ourselves into action. As I gathered documents and made calls, I couldn't help but think about Lucas, wondering if he had any idea of the storm that was about to hit him. One thing was certain. He was about to learn that underestimating me was the biggest mistake he'd ever made. The next morning dawned with an air of anticipation. I arrived at the bakery early, my nerves on edge as I waited for news from Mason. Olivia was already there, her face etched with worry. Any word yet? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She shook her head. Nothing, but Mason said he'd call as soon as he heard anything. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. It was Mason. It's done, he said, his voice tight with excitement. Lucas's company has the evidence. They're calling him in for a meeting right now. My heart raced as I relayed the news to Olivia. This was it, the moment of truth. Hours ticked by agonizingly slowly as we waited for more information. I threw myself into work, desperately trying to distract myself from the knot of anxiety in my stomach. Just after lunch, the bakery door flew open. Lucas stormed in, his face contorted with rage. You! He snarled, pointing an accusing finger at me. You did this. I stood my ground, meeting his gaze steadily. Did what, Lucas? Tell the truth? He lunged forward, slamming his fists on the counter. They demoted me, took away my bonus, my office, everything, and it's all your fault. Olivia stepped between us, her voice cold. I think you'll find it's your own fault, Lucas. You made your choices. Lucas's eyes darted between us, realization dawning on his face. You knew about everything. We know about the affair, Lucas, I said, my voice stronger than I felt, and about your plan to sabotage our business. It's over. For a moment, Lucas seemed to deflate. Then his face hardened. You think you've won? This isn't over. I'll make sure you lose everything, the bakery, Sophia, all of it. As he stormed out, the bell above the door jangling violently, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread wash over me. Olivia squeezed my hand. You did it, honey. You stood up to him. But our moment of victory was short-lived. My phone rang. It was Dr. Simmons from the hospital. Mrs. Reynolds, she said, her voice grave. We've received some concerning information about your bakery. I'm afraid we'll have to cancel our contract immediately. My world seemed to tilt on its axis. But we addressed all your concerns. We proved those allegations were false. I'm sorry, Dr. Simmons replied, but we can't risk any negative publicity. It's out of my hands. As I hung up, tears stinging my eyes, Mason burst through the door. Farah, you need to see this. He held up his phone, showing me a local news website. There, in bold letters, was the headline, Local Bakery Embroiled in Food Safety Scandal. It's everywhere, Mason said, his voice tight. Social media, news sites, Lucas must have had this ready to go as a backup plan. I sank into a chair, my head spinning. We'd exposed Lucas's deceit, but at what cost? Our reputation was in tatters, our biggest contract lost. How could we possibly recover from this? As if things couldn't get worse, my phone buzzed with a text from Sophia's school. Mrs. Reynolds, please come immediately. There's been an incident involving your daughter. Panic gripped me as I grabbed my keys. What had Lucas done now? Olivia caught my arm as I rushed past. Farah, wait. Whatever happens, remember, you're stronger than you know. We'll get through this together. I nodded, trying to draw strength from her words. As I drove to Sophia's school, my mind raced. Lucas had thrown everything he had at us, and for a moment it seemed like he might win. But as I pulled into the school parking lot, a newfound determination welled up inside me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Sophia, about our family legacy, about standing up to bullies like Lucas. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever came next. Lucas might think he'd won this round, but I was far from defeated. The real fight was just beginning. And I was ready for it. I burst through the school doors, my heart pounding. The principal's secretary ushered me into the office, where I found Sophia sitting quietly, her eyes red and puffy. "Mrs. Reynolds," the principal began, her face grave, "there's been an incident. Sophia got into an altercation with another student. I knelt beside my daughter, gently taking her hand. "Sweetie, what happened?" Sophia's lip quivered. "Tommy said our bakery makes people sick. He said Daddy told his dad so. I pushed him." My blood ran cold. Lucas had stooped so low as to use our daughter in his vendetta against me. "I'm so sorry," I said to the principal. "We're going through a difficult time at home. It won't happen again." As we left the school, my phone buzzed incessantly with calls from worried customers and friends. The damage Lucas had done was spreading like wildfire. Back at the bakery, Olivia and Mason were fielding a barrage of calls and social media messages. The atmosphere was tense, bordering on panic. "Farah," Mason said, his voice strained, "we're losing customers by the minute. If this keeps up—" I nodded, understanding the unspoken implication. Our bakery, our legacy, was on the brink of collapse. Just then, the bell above the door chimed. Lucas sauntered in, a smug smile on his face. "Well, well," he drawled, "quite the busy day you're having." Rage boiled inside me. "How dare you," I hissed. "How dare you use our daughter in your sick game?" Lucas's smile faltered for a moment. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Cut the act, Lucas," I snapped. "I know everything. The affair, the sabotage, all of it. And now this. Turning our community against us? Using Sophia?" For a moment, Lucas looked taken aback. Then his face hardened. "You brought this on yourself, Farah. If you'd just given up this pathetic little bakery like I asked—" "Enough," I shouted, surprising even myself with the force of my voice. "I've had enough of your lies, your manipulation, your cruelty." I stormed to the back office, yanking open a drawer. When I returned, I slapped a thick envelope on the counter between us. "What's this?" Lucas asked, eyeing it warily. "Divorce papers," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I want you out of our lives, Lucas. For good." Lucas's face contorted with rage. He lunged forward, grabbing my wrist. "You can't do this to me," he snarled. Suddenly, Mason was there, pulling Lucas away. "That's enough, man. It's over." As Mason escorted a fuming Lucas out, I turned to find Sophia standing in the doorway, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. "Mom?" she whispered. "Are you and Daddy getting divorced?" My heart shattered. This was the moment I'd been dreading. The moment where I had to shatter my daughter's world to save our future. I knelt down, pulling her into a tight hug. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. Sometimes grown-ups can't stay together, even if they both love their children very much." As Sophia sobbed in my arms, I looked up to see Olivia and Mason watching us, their faces a mix of sympathy and determination. "What do we do now?" Mason asked quietly. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "We fight back. We tell our side of the story. We show this community who we really are." Olivia nodded, a fierce pride in her eyes. "That's my girl. We're Reynolds women. We don't give up." As I held my daughter close, comforting her through her tears, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with legal battles, rebuilding our reputation, and helping Sophia navigate this new reality. But for the first time in years, I felt truly free. Free from Lucas's manipulation, free from the constant fear and doubt. Whatever came next, I knew I had the strength to face it. I looked around at my family, not just Sophia and Olivia, but Mason too, who had stood by us through everything. This was what mattered. This was worth fighting for. "All right," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "Let's get to work. We have a bakery to save and a future to build." As we began to plan our next moves, I realized that this wasn't just about saving the bakery anymore. It was about reclaiming our lives, our dignity, and our right to happiness. Lucas had tried to break us, but he'd only made us stronger. The real battle was just beginning, and I was ready for it. 6 months after I handed Lucas those divorce papers, I stood in the newly expanded Reynolds family bakery, marveling at how much had changed. The aroma of fresh bread and sweet pastries filled the air, a comforting reminder of our resilience. The bell above the door chimed, and I turned to see Dr. Simmons from Sweetheart's Children's Hospital walk in, a warm smile on her face. "Mrs. Reynolds," she said, extending her hand. Or should I say, Miss Reynolds now? I shook her hand, returning the smile. Farah, please. It's good to see you, Dr. Simmons. She looked around approvingly. I must say I'm impressed. After everything that happened, to see you not just recover, but thrive, it's remarkable. I felt a surge of pride. The past months had been a whirlwind of legal battles, community outreach, and tireless work to rebuild our reputation. But we'd done it. We'd not only salvaged our business, but expanded it. We couldn't have done it without the community's support, I said. And yours. Renewing our contract meant everything to us. Dr. Simmons nodded. Well, when the truth came out about your ex-husband's deception, it was the least we could do. Those children love your treats too much for us to let a few lies get in the way. As if on cue, Sophia burst through the door, her face flushed with excitement. Mom? Grandma? Guess what? I got the lead in the school play. I scooped her up in a hug, my heart swelling with love and pride. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. As I set her down, I caught sight of Lucas's parents entering the bakery. Despite everything that had happened with Lucas, they had remained a constant, loving presence in Sophia's life. I was grateful for that, for Sophia's sake. Go say hi to Nana and Papa, I told Sophia, watching as she ran to embrace them. Olivia appeared at my side, wiping flour from her hands onto her apron. Look at her, she said softly. She's flourishing, Farah. You both are. I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. The journey hadn't been easy, but seeing Sophia happy and thriving made it all worth it. Just then Mason walked in, a newspaper tucked under his arm. Have you seen this? He asked, handing it to me. The headline read, Local man arrested for corporate espionage and fraud. Below was a photo of Lucas being led away in handcuffs. I skimmed the article, my hands shaking slightly. Lucas's attempts to sabotage our business had led to a wider investigation, uncovering years of fraudulent activities at his company. He was facing serious jail time. Are you okay? Mason asked, his voice laced with concern. I took a deep breath, surprised to find that I felt relieved. I am, I said, realizing it was true. It's over, really over. As I looked around the bakery, at Sophia laughing with her grandparents, at Olivia chatting with regular customers, at Mason's supportive presence beside me, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. This was my family. This was my legacy. And I had fought tooth and nail to protect it. You know, I said to Mason, I used to think strength meant never showing weakness, never asking for help. But now I realize true strength is in vulnerability, in leaning on others when you need to, and in standing up for what's right, no matter the cost. Mason squeezed my shoulder. You're the strongest person I know, Farah. As the day wound down and we closed up shop, I found myself alone in the bakery. I ran my hand along the smooth countertop, thinking of all the generations of Reynolds women who had stood in this very spot. I thought of the challenges we'd faced, the battles we'd won, and the bright future ahead of us. I thought of Sophia and the example I hoped I was setting for her. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly, completely at peace. Whatever life threw at us next, I knew we could handle it. Because we were Reynolds women. And Reynolds women don't break. We rise. With a smile on my face and hope in my heart, I turned off the lights and stepped out into the cool evening air, ready to embrace whatever tomorrow might bring.